Millions knew him as the smiling Beatle, the drummer who always seemed happiest behind the kit, flashing a grin while the world sang along. But away from the roaring crowds and the bright lights, Ringo Starr carried a far quieter story. It wasn't a story about music. It was about love and the painful lessons that came with it. Before he found the woman who would stand beside him for more than 4 decades, Ringo experienced a heartbreaking first love, a marriage that slowly slipped away, relationships that promised new beginnings but ended in disappointment, and years when fame couldn't fill the emptiness he carried inside. Each chapter left a mark that shaped the man he would eventually become. Today, we'll follow that remarkable journey, from the streets of Liverpool to the heights of Beatlemania, through heartbreak, redemption, and the unexpected love that arrived only after life had humbled him. Sometimes, the greatest love story isn't the first one. It's the one you spend a lifetime becoming ready for. The first woman who captured Ringo's heart. Long before the world knew him as Ringo Starr, Richard Starkey was simply a young man from Liverpool trying to outrun a difficult childhood. Music gave him hope, but it offered no promises. The clubs were small, the pay was uncertain, and no one could have imagined that one local drummer was about to become part of history. Among the familiar faces around the Cavern Club was a cheerful young hairdresser named Maureen Cox. Like many local girls, she loved the music, but what caught her attention wasn't fame, because there wasn't much fame yet. She saw a quiet, good-humored young man who laughed easily and treated people with kindness. Their conversations were simple, their dates inexpensive, and their dreams no bigger than those of countless other young couples across Britain. Then, almost overnight, everything changed. Beatlemania swept across the world with a force no one had ever witnessed. Wherever the Beatles traveled, crowds screamed, photographers pushed forward, and privacy disappeared. The ordinary life Ringo and Maureen had shared suddenly became extraordinary. Yet amid all the excitement, Ringo made a decision that surprised many fans. On February 11, 1965, he married Maureen, choosing the woman who had loved him before the headlines, before the fortune, and before millions of strangers believed they knew him. To Ringo, she wasn't part of the success story. She was part of the beginning. Together they welcomed 3 children, Zach, Jason, and Lee. And whenever his demanding schedule allowed, Ringo treasured the quiet moments at home far more than glamorous parties or flashing cameras. Friends often remembered that the happiest version of Ringo wasn't standing beneath stage lights. It was the husband laughing with his family around the dinner table. For a while it seemed that love had defeated fame, but fame is patient. It doesn't always destroy a marriage in a single moment. Sometimes it does, so one missed birthday, one long tour, and one lonely evening at a time. Neither Ringo nor Maureen could yet see the slow distance beginning to grow between them. By the time they finally noticed it, the life they had worked so hard to build would already be slipping through their hands, when fame slowly pulled love apart. By the early 1970s, the dream that had once seemed unbreakable was beginning to unravel. From the outside, Ringo Starr still appeared to have everything: a remarkable career, financial success, and a loving family waiting at home. But behind closed doors, life had become far more complicated than the smiling Beatle ever let the public see. The breakup of the Beatles left every member searching for a new direction. For Ringo, the uncertainty was accompanied by long nights, heavy drinking, and the emotional weight of a changing life. Success had given him everything he had once dreamed of, yet it also brought endless travel, constant attention, and temptations that few marriages could easily survive. His relationship with Maureen Cox gradually suffered. Time together became increasingly rare, while misunderstandings became more common. Both later acknowledged that the marriage had been deeply affected by the pressures surrounding them. Stories of infidelity circulated during those difficult years, adding even more strain to a relationship that had once seemed so effortless. There were no dramatic public arguments or sensational courtroom battles. Instead, their marriage faded through disappointment, distance, and the realization that the lives they now lived were very different from the ones they had imagined as young lovers in Liverpool. In 1975, after 10 years of marriage, they quietly divorced. For many fans, it marked the end of one of rock music's most beloved love stories. Yet despite the heartbreak, neither spent the years that followed attacking the other in public. Their greatest shared commitment remained their 3 children, and over time they found ways to maintain respect as parents, even after their marriage had ended. Sometimes the deepest heartbreak doesn't arrive with anger. It arrives with silence. For Ringo, the divorce closed one chapter but opened another, one filled with loneliness, uncertainty, and a search for happiness that would lead him into the arms of several remarkable women. Some relationships brought excitement, others offered comfort, but none seemed able to fill the emptiness left behind. That search would soon become one of the most fascinating periods of his life. The women who tried to heal a lonely heart. When Ringo Starr's marriage to Maureen ended in 1975, the headlines focused on another celebrity divorce. But behind those newspaper stories was a man quietly trying to understand how the life he had always wanted had slipped away. For the first time in years, he was living without the family that had once given him stability. The applause was still there. The fame had not faded. Yet when the concerts ended and the cameras disappeared, success could be an unexpectedly lonely companion. In the years that followed, several women entered Ringo's life, each arriving at a different moment when he was searching for a fresh beginning. British singer-songwriter Lindsay DePaul shared his love of music and creativity, and for a brief time they seemed to enjoy each other's company. But the relationship quietly ran its course, leaving both to continue on separate paths. Soon afterward came photographer Nancy Lee Andrews. Their relationship lasted far longer and grew much deeper. They shared a home, became engaged, and built a life that many friends believed would lead to marriage. Nancy even photographed the covers of Ringo IV and Bad Boy, becoming part of both his personal and professional world. Yet lasting happiness remained just beyond reach. The pressures that had troubled earlier years had not completely disappeared, and their relationship gradually became marked by periods of closeness, followed by painful distance. During one of their separations, Ringo was briefly linked with actress Shelley Duvall, while reports also connected him with Stephanie LaMotta for a short time. Whether those relationships were meaningful or simply moments along the way, none lasted long enough to quiet the uncertainty he still carried within himself. Looking back, it is easy to see that Ringo wasn't truly searching for another romance. He was searching for himself. The marriage that had once anchored his life was gone, and no new relationship could heal wounds he had not yet faced. Those years became less about finding the right woman than learning that lasting love begins only after we confront our own struggles. Without realizing it, every disappointment was leading him toward a meeting that neither he nor anyone around him could have predicted. A meeting with a woman who would become not only the love of his life, but the partner who would help him rebuild it. The unexpected love that changed everything. By the dawn of the 1980s, Ringo Starr had already lived several lifetimes in the public eye. He had experienced unimaginable success with the Beatles, watched his first marriage come to an end, and spent years searching for happiness in relationships that never quite became the home he longed for. From a distance, his life still looked extraordinary. Privately, he knew something was missing. Then, in 1980, an ordinary film project quietly changed everything. While filming the comedy Caveman in Mexico, Ringo met actress Barbara Bach. The world knew her as the elegant Bond girl from The Spy Who Loved Me. He met someone entirely different, a woman who understood that fame could be both a privilege and a burden. Their friendship grew naturally. There were no grand declarations, no tabloid-worthy whirlwind romance. and no attempt to impress one another. After years of living under constant public attention, they found comfort in something surprisingly simple. They could be themselves. Barbara had already experienced the pressures of celebrity and the endless scrutiny that came with it. Ringo didn't have to explain the loneliness that often followed the applause. She understood it because she had lived it herself. For perhaps the first time since the end of his marriage to Maureen, Ringo wasn't trying to escape the past. He was finally beginning to accept it. As their relationship deepened, he realized he could no longer continue the life he had been living. His engagement to Nancy Lee Andrews came to a respectful end, and he chose to follow a new path with Barbara. It was a difficult decision, but one he believed was honest for everyone involved. Many people assumed it was simply another celebrity romance destined to fade with time. History would tell a different story. On April 27, 1981, Ringo and Barbara were married in the company of family, close friends, and fellow Beatles Paul McCartney and George Harrison. There were smiles, photographs, and every reason to believe the future would be brighter than the past. But the vows they exchanged that day would soon be tested in ways neither of them could have imagined. The greatest challenge to their marriage would not come from fame. It would come from the private battle they would have to face together, one that would either break them apart or bind them more closely than ever before. The marriage that survived life's hardest storm. Every marriage eventually reaches a moment when love alone is no longer enough. For Ringo Starr and Barbara Bach, that moment arrived only a few years after their wedding. From the outside, they appeared to have everything people dream about: successful careers, beautiful homes, admiring fans. Wherever they went, cameras followed. Yet behind closed doors, a different story was unfolding, one that very few people fully understood. As the years passed, alcohol slowly tightened its grip on both of their lives. What had once seemed like part of the glamorous world they lived in gradually became something far more destructive. Days became harder to face. Small disagreements became larger ones. The happiness they had found together was being overshadowed by a struggle that neither wealth nor fame could solve. There were moments when walking away might have seemed easier. Many couples would have. But Ringo and Barbara made a different choice. Instead of blaming one another, they faced the truth together. In 1988, hand in hand, they entered rehabilitation. It was one of the most courageous decisions either of them had ever made. There were no cheering crowds waiting outside, no standing ovations, only the difficult work of confronting themselves, one day at a time. Recovery did not happen overnight. It demanded honesty, patience, and a willingness to begin again after years of living in the shadow of addiction. There were difficult days, quiet victories, and countless moments when the support of the person beside them mattered more than anything else. Years later, Ringo would often describe sobriety as the greatest gift he and Barbara ever gave themselves. The one woman Ringo Starr says he loved the most. As the years passed and the excitement of Beatlemania became part of history, Ringo Starr found himself looking back on a life that had been richer and more complicated than he ever imagined. He had known first love, painful loss, and relationships that seemed promising but were never meant to last. Age brought something fame never could: perspective. When people asked him about the secret to his happiness, Ringo rarely spoke about hit records or sold-out concerts. He spoke about Barbara Bach. In interviews over the years, he has repeatedly described Barbara as his best friend and the person who transformed his life. He has often said they genuinely enjoy being together and that they simply never grew tired of one another. For a man who had spent years searching for stability, those simple words carried extraordinary meaning. Looking back, it became clear that every chapter of his romantic life had taught him something. Maureen Cox gave him the joy of family and the experience of young love. Lindsay DePaul, Nancy Lee Andrews, Shelley Duvall, and the reported relationship with Stephanie LaMotta belonged to a period when he was still trying to understand himself after heartbreak. But Barbara arrived when he was finally ready to build something that could endure. Their marriage has now lasted for more than 4 decades, an extraordinary achievement in any walk of life, and an even rarer one in the entertainment world. Through illness, recovery, family celebrations, and the quiet rhythm of growing older together, she remained the constant presence by his side. Perhaps that is why, at 85, Ringo's greatest love story is no longer about youthful romance or Hollywood glamour. It is about loyalty, it is about forgiveness, and it is about discovering that the love which lasts the longest is often the one built not on perfect beginnings, but on shared faith, unwavering commitment, and the decision to choose each other every single day. Ringo Starr's journey reminds us that the greatest love stories are rarely the easiest ones. They are shaped by mistakes, strengthened through forgiveness, and proven by the passage of time. From the excitement of young romance, to the heartbreak of loss, and finally to a marriage that has endured for decades, his life shows that true happiness often comes when we least expect it. Perhaps that's why his story continues to resonate with so many people today. Not because he was a Beatle, but because his search for lasting love was deeply human. If you enjoyed this journey through Ringo Starr's remarkable life, please like this video, subscribe to Legendary Archives, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another timeless story from the legends who shaped our world. Until next time, thank you for watching.